Good morning, Jason. How are you? Good to see
Doing
you.
doing great, Anna. It's great to see you as well, and I'm really happy that we're doing this session. It's been a long time we've been trying to schedule this, so I'm really happy to be talking to you today.
No, I absolutely agree. And, I obviously have had the opportunity and the pleasure to get to know you along the years. It's crazy to think that it's been years now that we've known each other. For those folks that don't know you yet, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so thanks. And likewise, I like to see you at the conference a couple of weeks ago here in Houston, the PMI Houston conference, and it was great. So I am a project management specialist. I've been working in the energy sector for over 25 years. So I've worked in many countries. I lived in Brazil for 20 years, so that was like a lifetime.
Wow.
Lived many years in Europe as well. I have a multicultural background. But basically, project management has always been my passion. And it's kind of, expanded to now as a PMO leader in my current role that I've had the last 3 years to look at the entire structure, the methodologies, and how we can make project managers more successful, set them up for success, and
Yes.
really look at the positive aspects of project management. But it's been great. It's been a great experience, especially working in South America all these years and seeing different perspectives, even in the Middle East. So I've kind of worked a little bit everywhere and take a little bit of every place that I've been with me to add to this cultural fusion.
Wow, that is definitely a an amazing background, not only from a an experiential role type, but also from layering the cultural aspects, the language aspects, the latitude aspects, right? Different ways in which people work in different parts of the world, right? That's another. You discover that one word in English in the U.S. means one thing, and the same word in another country means a completely different thing. At least I know I have found that out uh, in my career. But thank you. That's absolutely very interesting and very powerful. And I'm curious to get us started, Jason. So from your experience, from your everything that you've already amassed, if you may, what's one or the one mindset shift that you think separates an average project manager from an extraordinary one?
That's a great question. And I think the profession has evolved really over the last couple of decades as well to that respect of what are our expectations of project managers as they grow in their careers, what are some of those levers that they can really pull? I think the first one is don't just manage the schedule. You're actually a small business owner, so you need to be providing solutions. So I'm looking for a senior level project manager to really look at the entire business context of their project and say, okay, this is great on paper. This is how this should work. However, I can see some risk opportunities, other strategies that we can implement that I think will make us more successful as a company rather than a more junior level project manager telling me, well, I'm basically meeting the budget. I'm meeting the schedule. I'm delivering exactly what was written in the contract. Therefore, I have done my job.
Wow. And I'm also sensing from that real insightful response, Jason, that they also vert those learnings into their next project and their next project, and therefore their learnings and their expertise becomes more robust and deeper, right?
And they're sharing, yes. So at the more senior level, I'm looking also for them to be mentors to less experienced project managers. Like to your point about lessons learned, that's key.
Yep.
And most companies struggle with actually um, having a lessons learned database that they can leverage from the very beginning of the project lifecycle to the end. It should be a constant feedback loop. So you have risk management on one side, you have lessons learned on the other side. So what risk and opportunities actually manifested and
Sure.
why, and can we prevent them and or capitalize them if they were positive occurrences in the future? So a more senior level PM has that ability and should have that ability to make that connection and then get back to not only the commercial teams that originally bid the job, but other stakeholders and other functional areas where that leads to process improvement.
That's such an interesting aspect because definitely the schedules in project management, I cannot think of one area that you can absolutely have to have your finger on the pulse all the time, right? And understand what that may be. From your perspective, what's the most maybe counterintuitive lesson you've learned in leading complex projects, right? Because they're not obvious, they're not black and white, based exactly on what you just described.
So I think it depends on how the company has structured their project management and what they expect. So I have seen, for example, the an operations-led company really override good project management best practices, thinking that they're doing the right thing by either producing additional widgets faster and changing things to please the client rather than actually meeting contractual requirements and or not or completely ignoring the risk opportunity registers that have been developed with their inputs, hopefully. So they make the wrong decision, or they might make a decision in the short term they feel was very appropriate. In the long term, that actually produced negative project results and or dissatisfied clients, or worse even, an internal loss because they took things on to satisfy the client. I had a case where, we had this really hugely complex subsea equipment that had 4,000 parts. So imagine managing all those 4,000 parts. And the client said, just change the bolts and just give me a special coating on those boats and on those bolts, and it'll be all good. And our technical people said, that's a great idea. Absolutely great idea. Because they went to school to in search of the perfect design. What happened
Okay.
is that now limited to us to one supplier, three
Okay.
times the cost, a 3-month delay in delivery, and a very unsatisfied project manager being me saying, hey, how could you make that type of decision? I'm the one that should be making the decision. Whereas the operations thought, no, actually, that is my decision to make. I manufacture the product. So again, product versus project, operations versus project management. Lots of lessons there.
Absolutely. That's a huge insight in this particular area of yours of project management, Jason. And I'm very interested in understanding how is the decision. So the decision was made, you learn the decision after the fact. What happens when that happens in a project of that magnitude, and with all the multiple stakeholders and different areas to manage? What is the role of someone like you, the senior leader in something like this?
So one, obviously, it's super disruptive in lots of ways because you have to go back and redo your design. You have to then go back to engineering. You have to go to procurement. You have to go back to quality. So basically, everyone's involved. Safety as well, because obviously bolts keep it together. So if it were to break apart, someone can get hurt, or you could have a environmental incident or something like that. So it's really reaching out to those that made the decision and understanding why that happened and why that the PMs were not involved in that process. And I see a lot, especially in the energy sector, that technical people want to talk to technical people, and that's fine. There's nothing against that. That's how it should be. However, if they don't have the project management mindset, they're not thinking like a business owner, and they don't realize that a small decision can have such a large impact. So it's really escalating it up the chain
Okay.
functionally and awareness. But I will say that in my defense, the positive outcome was when we had the quality review, there was a specific quality procedure that said that that was not the correct thing to do, that the PM had to actually be involved and approve that decision. So it was awareness. So people weren't even aware that that was part of our quality procedure, quality manual. And maybe
Okay.
that's because it was 1,000 lines long or 1,000 pages long. So lots of work to do. So I think
Right.
maybe, in the future, AI can help us kind of, streamline that process a little bit more. But there's no excuse, if you want to use that term, to
Right.
not know about that, especially if it can have a huge impact on your project.
Wow, so many key layers, and I'm just thinking about in global projects with multiple cultures, with multiple languages, which I anticipate this was a really good example of that. What's the secret to building trust quickly?
I think trust is it's a challenge for anyone in any company, any culture, any situation.
Yeah,
My approach is always really positive. And in fact, yesterday I was talking to someone about this, saying that that does not always land well, um, depending on the level of the organization that you're actually talking to. But I think it's being relatable. You need to show your knowledge and curiosity of other cultures as well. So that's for me, it's natural. So I don't have that problem. I do recognize it's not the same for everyone. So
right.
I think if you show someone a little bit of respect in the fact that, hey, where are you from? And you've done a little research, and now with all the information available online today, there's no excuse to not do that. But
Yeah,
any request that I receive, I try to take seriously because if someone's requesting something, it's important to them for a reason. And
yeah,
sometimes people don't want to expose themselves in a way like, oh, look, I looked very unprofessional, ignorant, or something about that. And they don't
yeah,
want to say that. But if we don't really understand how those cultures, you know, process, interpret, and resolve those types of situations, then you can set yourself up for unpleasant um, or ineffective results because you might be thinking, I just told it to you one time. I expected that you would immediately retain that information. Whereas we
right.
know in some cultures, the first time you say something, they may not be actually switched on and paying full attention. And you may have
Sure.
to repeat that. And if you repeat that, then they're like, okay, I heard it the second time. I'll wait for the third time. And then the third time, I know it needs to be done.
Right.
Whereas in the United States, for example, we go to school and it's like, no, you get one chance. I say it to you one time, and if you didn't pay attention, that's your fault, and you should deal with it. So recognizing small things like that, that can have a huge impact on your team.
Okay. So making sure that everybody's on the same page almost on a constant basis, demonstrate this respect, this relatability, and this really profound respect for every human in the process, in the project, etc. But that sounds like a lot of work. Is that true?
It is, and I'll just add to that. And I just was thinking as we're talking that when I start any meeting, and basically I'm working currently for the most culturally diverse company I've ever worked for, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
I give everybody a quick check-in moment. So it's like a mental health check-in, and it can be a cultural check-in. It can be something that they want to talk about. It's again, it's important to them. Spend a couple of minutes, have everybody be able to express themselves, and
Yes.
then get onto the meeting. Because lots of times in meetings, we book an hour, but how much time are we really focused on the meeting during this entire 60 minutes? So if we
Yes.
were to sacrifice, if that's the right word,
Yeah.
10 minutes maybe to let everyone to kind of have a quick, hey, I'm here, check in. We learn a lot about each other. We learn about communication patterns. We learn about how people react to different situations just
Hmm.
by watching the room, and even if it's like a virtual room, how people are interacting. And it always fascinates me. I always learn every single day new things that I thought I knew before. But yeah, it's being curious, open, and allowing people to really express themselves.
That sounds amazing. And I'm sure that you invest a few minutes at the end of every meeting as well. I could almost see that happening based on what you're describing, right? To ensure that everything
And,
is
and the funny
done
thing is
well.
now with my current team is if I don't give them my mental health check-in, they
Yeah,
will say, hey, what about you? How are you? Because we're always used to asking everybody else how they are, but not
yeah,
always the manager, leader, or senior level person. We automatically expect that, hey, they must be fine.
yeah,
So I don't need to really ask that. So when I hear
yes,
that, I'm always taken, taken by surprise sometimes. I don't always hear that every meeting, but it does make me feel a little bit better when they do. But again, I don't expect it.
yes. It's one of the biggest challenges that I see with the leaders I work with is precisely this deep desire that and almost hunger that they have to go back to being human, meaning humanizing their workplaces, their teams. And sometimes the desire is there, the intention is there. The difficulty is, how do I bridge from what I want and what I need to do to execution? And what you just said is an amazing example of how to build those bridges to make a human environment, create human environments again. I really like that very much.
Yeah. And again, I do like the cultural shift, even the generational shift I've seen in the last 15 years, maybe,
Yeah,
to more of a humanistic side of management, empathetic, inclusive. I think we get so much more out of it, but it does take time and investment and a mindset. And again, it's
yeah,
training your brain, your being to do that. And for some people, it comes more naturally. For others, it takes time to develop that muscle, but I think it's
yeah,
well worth the investment.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I love the term investment because that also speaks to the fact that you have to invest, you have to put time, energy, discipline, and rigor into that, right? It's not oh, I'll do it today and I'll do it again maybe next year, because that's not how habits are formed and how things evolve, right? So I love that. So as I look at all these different components, I'm also very curious, Jason, about how do you balance the pressure of deadlines, um, and the need, of course, to ensure that your team is managing themselves with well-being, with a well-being focus, and yourself as well. So how do you balance that?
I mean, obviously, I think at the beginning, if we don't align expectations and really, and that's for that's planning. We say 70% of project activities are at the planning stage. So imagine, and if we're
Yeah,
thinking operationally, they're thinking the opposite. So that's what I'm saying. If we
right.
don't do the work up front, we don't set the expectation, we don't align the needs. I will say it's regular communication. So I know that even in a virtual world, if we're not meeting with our teams at least weekly, we're missing out. We're missing
Yeah.
out because especially with the velocity in which information is being exchanged today, even daily could be an option. That depends on, again, if you're virtual, if you're hybrid. Um, but usually I encourage everybody to say, hey, we have all these tasks going on. What are my priorities? And I might be late on this. So don't create that psychologically safe space to say, hey,
Yeah.
it's okay to tell me that you're at risk of being late. You don't have to be perfect. Because perfectionism, while on one hand it might lead to a higher standard, on the other
Yes.
hand, it will sacrifice your being. And I have a great example. When I was 25 years of age, I took the weight of the world on my shoulders. I had a acute stress attack from trying to be perfect in my
Oh,
first, it was my third project. I landed in the hospital
wow.
with an acute stress attack, and I spent 5 days there. And the doctors were saying, "You were way too high strung. You cannot continue like this. It's extremely rare for someone your age who's normally healthy, so you've not had any health
Right.
issues. You caused this. You're on yourself. It's yours. You need to own
Yeah.
it, and you need to say that's not sustainable."
Yeah.
And from that point on, it really shifted my mindset to saying, okay, how do I prevent that from happening in the future? So I tried to relate this to my team and say, hey, I know what you're going through. Well, I might know what you're going through. I hope
Yeah.
I can relate to what you're going through. Maybe that's a better
Right.
way of saying it. And then making sure that if we have to reassign things, if we have to reprioritize, if I need to take any of the work on myself, I need to show them that I'm willing to do that because it is a team effort. So if they feel like they have a backup plan, then, and obviously I'm expecting that they're not going to use that every single time.
Of course.
But if you create the space, you set people up for success, you encourage them. In my experience, it's not really been abused, but
Yeah.
it is a conversation. So open communication, back and forth, and back to your cultural question, that open communication expresses itself differently with different cultures. So you have to be able to understand, do I understand what you're telling me?
Right.
I hear the words, but I don't really understand what you're trying to communicate.
Right. Right. And also, as I'm thinking about all these various layers and pearls of wisdom that you're sharing with me today, also the trust factor. This is another amazing way to build and strengthen the trust within your team and or teams that you collaborate with, and of course strengthening the psychological safety around, right? It is okay to not be okay, but we have to have these conversations. You have to tell me, you have to raise your hand, you have to ask for help, hopefully sooner rather than later, etc. And all these different practices that you're describing are so powerful and needed in this day and age. Jason, I don't know if you'd be surprised of how many people don't do that. Is correct, but I think you have a very good grasp on how much that is needed in this day and age.
And I appreciate that. And I will say that I was taken back one time a few years back when I thought I was doing the right thing and talking every single day to an employee that I had recently hired who worked for me in a previous company, by the way. So we kind
Oh
of
wow.
knew each other. So we had a really great rapport.
Right.
And every single day, and then all of a sudden, one day he shows up super depressed and says, I'm resigning, I'm leaving. Today's my last day.
Wow.
And I was like, I didn't see that one coming. Yesterday it was all fine and dandy. And he's like, yeah, but I've just been projecting
Yeah.
and now I can't take it anymore. And I was like, wow, okay. So I completely did not read the room, or I thought I had understood, but it was a generational thing. And maybe I wasn't responding to the generational need rather
Okay.
than looking at it from a business professional context. And so anyway, even investing all this time does not guarantee the final perfect result. But yeah,
That's correct. And leadership, and this is a conclusion that I have landed myself after working with thousands of leaders throughout my career, is a little bit or a lot like parenting. There's a lot of effort, that's a lot of strategy that goes into it. By the same token, you never, if you have 4 children, if you have 5 children, if you have 2 children, they're all different. Different strategies, different ways, different formulas. Similar things happen with your team members, with your stakeholders, etc. Thank you for allowing me to share that kind of insight that I had one day, and I was like, oh my goodness, this looks a little bit like parenting. I don't know why. And what about, now that I talk about leadership, Jason, what do you when you think about decision making as a leader, and thinking about the talent that you keep, the talent that you help, maybe the talent that you help move into another area, etc. What would be, or what has been one of the hardest leadership decisions that you have had to make relative to people?
well, it was on a project I had, um, and I had a really great high performing project manager who I could completely count on. I could just go to bed at night, not worry about it, and I knew the job was going to get done. They made some unfortunate decisions in the workplace that
Okay.
compromised their integrity. I can't really talk about it, but I'm just saying. So
Yeah.
because of a poor decision that either broke the the company's policies or the handbook, the guidelines,
Ethics. Yeah.
I had
Hmm.
no choice but to let them go.
Yeah.
And it had an immediate impact on the team, and it was really, really super unfortunate. And it's something that, back to your point about trust, I would never have imagined that attitude, that decision could have been taken, even talking to this person regularly. So I was really disappointed, and it really affected me a lot because I was like, you're not a bad person, but
Yeah.
you made a really bad decision. And unfortunately, I can't look the other way. So yeah, that was not a pleasant situation.
I can definitely imagine, and it also demonstrates and brings the role modeling that you have to do with others, meaning these are the guidelines, these are the rules, these are some recommendations. But if you break one of the rules that have been established and we all said we were going to follow, if you decide to break one of those, well, we all know what the consequences are, and it doesn't matter who you are and at what level you are and how amazing rock star you've been. That is going to be your last day.
And this is where empathy meets accountability. And depending on the company, the culture, the position, that is not a black and white line.
Yeah,
And sometimes we want to be really, really super clear
yeah,
and saying, hey, if you do this, then these are grounds. But we don't want you to think about the negative consequences. That shouldn't be the first thing that kind of drives your behavior every day. But it should, in a way, just like safety. Safety should be your number one priority no
it
matter what.
no matter what.
So again, I think psychologically we are complex as humans. Um,
Yes.
how do we navigate that? Trying to be empathetic versus holding people accountable, not always easy, even at the highest levels of the company.
Yes, yes, and I've seen this happen. I've been part inside of organizations that the CEO has been let go because of something that he did, and it was, for me, it was very, very certainly sad, but confirmed that I was in the right company because they were really following protocol. It didn't matter that it was the CEO. He broke the rules, so basic that it's not even funny, and basically that cost him the job. And how they managed everything, the communication, etc., was very, very important. And I can tell you that it was a big message for the employees, but certainly for the board, the stakeholders, and clients of that humongous company in the world. So we see that we've seen that many times as well. So um, is there any, as we start to think about AI, obviously, and automation, right? It's not a what's going to happen. No, it's here, right? It's here. And automation is definitely changing workflows, is part of our every single day lives. What will still be, you think, Jason? I'm super curious about this, uniquely human about project management, even with AI?
Excellent question, by the way. And we talked about it. And PMI actually has developed an AI certification, by the way. So there's been three
Cool.
mini certifications that I've taken. And
Yeah.
now there's an actual full-blown AI certification with prompts and how it can be useful to us. But people manage projects, basically. So
Yeah.
machines are not yet managing projects. I hope they never do. Um, but we always say that the number one skill of any project manager is communication. And when I say communication,
Interesting.
it's not just verbal, it's also written, it's also any form of communication. We
Okay.
have to be able to effectively communicate at all times. So that is not going away. What AI will do for me in a case will say I can get all of the information quicker that I need and maybe not have to develop everything as granular as I thought, but I still have to communicate, I have to negotiate, and I have to make decisions based on the
Okay.
data. So the data may lead you into one situation, but that may not be the right decision to make. And I'll explain to you, for example, and these are the
Mm-hmm.
conundrums we have as project managers when you do
Okay.
the PMP certification, is you need to make the right decision based on the business context. And
Mm.
business context is super diverse, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
AI could not possibly do that. Let's
Yeah.
say I have to decide either in favor of the client or in favor of my company on a specific issue.
Okay.
Going back to our example on changing the bolts for that subsea equipment,
Right.
if I had known about it, I would have said, we're not going to do that. Even though, from an operational standpoint and from a client technical standpoint, it would be a very interesting decision to make. It would
Yeah.
enhance its additional features, but it's not the right decision to make for the project. So I would have said, I'm sorry, I hear what you're saying, but we're not going to do that. And it won't be a popular decision. And
Right.
then the company internally, I might have to do some firefighting or some damage control after that. But
Yeah.
AI does not have that ability to give me, for example, the right decision. It might give me 3 or 4 options from which I can decide, but eventually I'm the one that has to decide.
Right. Right. And as you were describing this, and I'm processing the communication part, including even the nonverbal, even leading with your presence, leading with what you represent, etc. Certainly your written, certainly your verbal, on all these many layers of communications has. But I was even thinking about that, right? Like, we have the meeting with Jason. He's kind, he's good, he's professional, but he's no nonsense, right? If we committed to something, we have to deliver. So for that meeting on Monday, things have to be done, right? It's just your presence, and that's also what you communicate as a PM. And the other bit that I thought is critical thinking, right? Critical thinking as one of the, which in a way you expressed it, was bits and pieces of what you described, but I wanted to make sure and rescue or put that in front of everyone, because that's one of the skills, in addition to several that you have described: empathy, compassion, etc., that are going to be required and fundamental in 2030. I mean, that's like, it feels like a long time, but it's really not, right? 5 years is going to go. I'm already thinking about Thanksgiving. Thank you very much. Right? It's like, what's going on? That is fast. That is fast.
I will say though, just for a funny thing here is that
Sure.
um, I used AI, I guess about a year ago, because they were saying just a test to see how it could take an article that I had written, and I said, okay, now I want to write another article, and I want you to put it in my voice. To your point,
Okay.
and it didn't. It couldn't, because we're such complex. Our personalities are such complex that it thought that it knew how to express itself from my point of view, or from my personality, or my being. It didn't.
Right.
It did not. So I'm just saying
Right.
maybe it can spit out facts and numbers, but it can't
Right.
today, as of today, as far as I know, it still can't do that.
Yeah. I mean, they're learning or language models, right? And they basically compile, summarize, highly sophisticated. They can do things that they would take you or myself analyzing. Remember when with the example that you were describing with the client and the 1,000 lines of as part of the project plan, etc., rather than you or anybody else investing in doing that analysis, AI could do the analysis and spit it out very quickly. And then with critical thinking, having the right people in the conversation make the decision what that is best for the different constituents, right? That's a different way to bring it as such. And I don't know, one of the things that, at least in my space, because I deal in the people space, is that the number one use of AI today in the world is for um, mental health. That's the
Huh,
number one thing. The
okay.
number one way I use AI as a mental health support.
Huh, interesting. Okay.
It's and related ones. The top three are related in that family of uh, between considerations of loneliness and other types of challenges, burnout, overwhelm, what have you. Very for someone like myself, it's always interesting because it's not in, developing businesses and creating, inventing. That's happening, right? That's happening. But the majority of people are using it for mental health related situations. So as
That's
a
interesting. Yeah.
doctor, as a therapist, basically.
Excellent. I have to dig into that. That's very interesting, actually.
It's there's a Harvard. Let me know if you cannot find it. Just let me know. I'll send it to you. It's a Harvard article, very from a couple of months ago. Very, very interesting, and that's one of several. Very, very interesting. Wow.
Good. Okay, I love it.
Yeah. So let me ask you this last point. What is one trend? Because trends are always very, very important in any sector, right? But if we think about project management, what is one trend that particularly excites you, and maybe one that worries you?
One that worries me, it's always been the case, and I've made videos about this, about project management basically being a thankless job. Because the expectation is keep all the plates spinning, nothing falls down. That's what I expect you to do. You make it happen the way it needs to happen, and that's it. When it does happen, though, and nothing fell down and nothing got broken, there's not always like, "Hey, great job. Thank God that you were there to do this, and I'm really really happy that you were there." And it's almost like, well, that's what you're supposed to do. So why do I need to say more? Right? So I still think it's oftentimes, a misunderstood profession, and we always feel like PMs are superhuman, and they don't need that validation.
Mhm.
However, on the flip side, what I do see, and this is what I really like about recent trends in project management and in the Project Management Institute PMI, obviously, I'm very attached to that, as you know, but they have come up with a lot of great concepts recently, including the more which was the theme of our project conference you were at a couple of weeks ago, is reframing what project success means, but really looking at the term success and not necessarily KPI, performance indicators where did you meet it, did you
Yeah.
not meet it, with I don't want to say the expectation that you will not meet in some cases, because we say that
Yeah.
most projects don't meet all of their KPIs,
Yeah.
but we like to be quick to point out, well, you didn't meet that. Well,
Yeah.
you didn't meet this. Rather than let's celebrate the successes of project manager. Why was this project a success? How could it be framed as a success? And the funny thing is, we always feel like, oh, well, you're on time, you're on budget, then um, you delivered what was supposed to be done in the scope. What if the project success factor was we we know we're going to lose money on this project, so that's not a success factor. What I want to do is recover the client relationship. I want to keep my assets working so that they're not idle and I have to be paying with no job. See, we take a job at a loss for a strategic reason.
Yeah.
I had a project recently where a PM took a job at minus 30% margin,
Oh,
delivered minus 5%. So for
wow.
me, that's highly successful.
Of course.
But for the finance people that don't have the context and don't know this, they're like, how could you lose 5%?
Right.
So if we're not framing it at the beginning, then we're not setting the project manager up for success. But if we're not thinking business context and saying, you know what, I think that the most important thing here is not necessarily the money. Obviously, money is important, but it's not the most important thing, because I have a balanced portfolio where I know I'm going to get money from other projects. But in your
Right.
project, that's not the key. I want you to recover a relationship. We've been blacklisted for the last 10 years. We have to get back on the client's good graces. You know what to do. Work the relationship, spend the money, but
Right.
get them back as a trusted client. And then that happens, and you recognize them for their efforts and say, great job. Every time I say, great job, well done, I'm checking a project for either a health check or a project review and say, great job presenting that. You did a really awesome job on this project. They don't expect it. That's the
Okay.
mindset shift we have to have. It's like, well, no one ever tells me I did a good job. It's like, oh, okay, great. I'm happy. You know what I'm saying? So I
Yes.
think we have been portrayed even over the years. It's like we're hard nosed, we're inflexible because we don't like change. We made the best project plan. Our plan is perfect. We don't want it to change. Change is disruptive. And then we push back on change and we're considered negative and inflexible and things like that. Rather than, okay, recognize that change is a constant. It's going to happen. No project I've ever seen in my entire career has not had at least one change.
Uh-huh.
So frame yourself up psychologically for that. But at the end, you can say, you know what? You managed to change very well in that project, by the way. You were hit with like 50 MOCs and you just really managed the entire process.
Right.
Great job. So that I think where we are going. And in some industries that's we're already there, but not in all industries. So I'm thinking, for my campaign, I like to campaign on my social media. Let's accentuate the positive, recognize when things don't go well, to your point,
Yeah.
but let's celebrate PMs because PMs don't grow on trees. And we know that by 2030, also to your point, we're expected to have a shortage of about 6 million project managers worldwide.
Wow.
So how are you going to make sure that people want to do that if they know they're going to get beaten down? Um, so is that what you really want for yourself? Or let
Right.
me make this more meaningful for you?
Wow, that's amazing. And one of the things that I am really taking from this last component is that how nicely you pulled everything from the technical aspect to the mindset shifts to the psychological aspects that you have to have as a project manager, whether you're junior, medium, or senior, or obviously managing the whole thing like you are right now, and how critical it is to think about this as a possible area of of focus. I know that a lot of people are looking where to what their next step should be work wise. I think project management can be an amazing one.
It continues to
Simple
be the
yes, easy
profession. Yeah,
no.
absolutely. And that's a profession of the future. And I think this might be a great segue into now turning the tables and me asking you a few questions, if you will allow me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Before we go, just where can people find you, Jason?
So I'm on LinkedIn. So I'm Jason Winters. I think it's Global Project Executive out
Okay.
there. So I'm the only, well, I'm not the only one. I used to be one of two that had PMP, but if you look me up, you should be able to find me on LinkedIn. And if you type project management LinkedIn, you should be able to find me.
Okay.
I'm also on Subs. I have a Subs account as I think it's little Jason 2000. It might be in my handle or something like that. And then I'm also on TikTok. I'm under Jason Winters PMP on
Perfect.
TikTok, where I make lots of videos talking about project management, talking about leadership, talking about multicultural topics. So I call it survival skills for expats and project managers. So yes, I'm quite active on social media.
That's amazing. Lots of pearls of wisdom. So thank you for that conversation. I'm ready to continue a conversation. Um, Time is good. If we need to stop at the top of the hour because of you, I'm open. Just let me know. I'm good.
Okay, great. I'm sorry it took so much time on this, but
No, no, no. This was very important, and I think the practice. We're after the practice, so all is good.
well, great. So now I have to turn the tables on you, Anna, and I have to
Yeah,
actually pick your brain on some things that you brought up because I am all about, the mindset. How do we get people to be high performers? How do we get high performing teams? Um, Especially in my situation where I do work with lots of technical people
yeah,
across different products and services. So I'm curious in your experience. So you've worked a lot with the energy sector. I know you've mentioned that. So that's the example I can readily think about. But
yeah.
we talk about mindset intelligence. Um, how is that a challenge for people that have more of a technical background and then
Hmm.
now are assuming a leadership role?
Yeah, and this is definitely an area, mindset intelligence, mindset in general, but mindset intelligence, it's a huge focus for me. And if I were to start with your question around the technicality or being technical, very skilled in that space and moving into leadership, for example, or I'm already there, technical skills really get you in the door, right? But mindset intelligence, what that does is that it keeps you in the game and it keeps you growing. So this became such an important aspect for me that I decided to certainly research it and write a book about this topic: mindset intelligence, transform your mindset, transform your life. And basically in the book, the way I define mindset intelligence is this ability that we have to recognize, to reframe, and then rewire our thought patterns. And also combining that with a little bit of neuroscience, of course, it shows us that when leaders expand their inner capacity, they can really unlock resilience, they can really unlock clarity and growth. And without it, so without mindset intelligence, technical expertise is like horsepower without a steering wheel. And I see, honestly, the future belonging to the type of leaders like yourself who can lead their own minds before they lead others. I think you're a great example of this.
I appreciate that, and I will say that that's something I've always struggled with in the energy sector. Is you have these brilliant technical minds, and sometimes PhDs and things like that, and you always have that stereotype of, well, probably not the best communicator, but probably super intelligent to get a design and really hone in on the details and the features,
Yeah,
but to get them up to a level, even project management acumen, because
yeah,
project management is the science of management. However, there's so many communication parts to it. How do you
mhm,
how do you get them through that journey quicker,
yeah.
especially if they're elevated like in a short period of time from a technical person to now leading people?
Yeah, and this is certainly at the crux of my research and what I try to present in the book. And it's simple, but it's not easy. It's everything starts when you look at behaviors, which is a lot of the work and a lot of the focus that I have had, for the largest part of my career. Behavioral change in organizations. How do you move a manager to becoming a leader? How do you bring an individual contributor to become a manager? So on and so forth. And what we see is behavior for everybody. But if you start to peel the onion on behavior, you basically land at basically, or where everything starts, it's at beliefs. So beliefs reside and are created in us at a very early age, in our first 7 years of life, and basically they are a acquisition, if you may, of the people that take care of us, our parents and grandparents, our teachers, etc., people that are around us, and with those beliefs uh, that is what specifically triggers the thoughts that we have. They inform those beliefs, and very many times they are limiting beliefs, right? Things that we believe that are not true, but are inserted in us. We have the wrong software, if you may, and informs our thoughts, that informs our emotions, that informs our actions and behavior. So, a little bit of a long-winded answer, Jason, to say that when dealing, or when I deal and have to work, for example, with a team where there is, whether there has been recent disruption or they are not being effective or efficient, everybody is super smart, but they really cannot really deliver. I typically go to this assessment to really understand where they are and they reside, and then we have to go into basically disarming those beliefs so that everything starts to trickle. It's basically rewiring their minds.
So I love that. And actually, what I'm thinking, I think you've coined a term that was relatively new to me about attention hygiene, and I like that concept. But I'm thinking, you have these beliefs, like you mentioned, that have been developed at a very young age, and some people, turn them into internal challenges and or natural habits that they have, even in the workplace. So if you
Yes.
were to say, well, I can't probably tackle this all at once, is it's too big. So
Yeah.
are there like daily habits that you can kind of develop and or train your mind to get you on to a better attention hygiene, as you said?
Yeah, and I think one, especially when we think about work, one that I usually recommend as the is going to give you the biggest bang for your buck, especially starting things, is defending. So finding and defending a window of the focus. Even like your life depends on it. So you have to identify ideally 90 minutes, but it can go between 50 and then you can scale it to 90. But cycles that the brain has of 90 minutes, but basically an opportunity for you to be with uninterrupted focus so that your brain really helps, is reset and really generates that the most out of your executive brain, the decision making, the creative networks, etc., lowers your stress because you don't have all the distractions, and of course you sharpen whatever decision making or critical thinking you have to have. It's literally, if you think about these 90-minute windows of deep focus, it's like mental flossing. It's really, really, really powerful. So if you can protect one focus sprint a day, and you're going to start to lead with a lot more clarity than most leaders do all week. It's that powerful. But it's, again, like you said, well, it's attention hygiene. You have to stop and do it in a deliberate way.
So I imagine that you can probably do this at any time of the day, or it depends on what's the best time for you. What are some recommendations there?
Fantastic question, Jason. You're obviously very, very studious of all these things. So yes, definitely, if it goes with your own energy. Some of us have higher energy in the morning. Some of us have higher energy in the latter part of the day, etc. If you can make it work with that, it's even much more powerful. I personally, I'm a morning person, so I get the most when I do this first thing in the morning. That's when I can do my most really creative work and most valuable work. So yes, accompany to what are your energy moments, and in order, some people, I know I get this question frequently, Jason. So how do I know when my energy is at my best? Well, map map yourself 2 or 3 days, and look at what times in the day you yourself feel with the most energy, and map that during 2 or 3 days, and you're gonna figure it out fairly quickly if you haven't already.
It almost seems like you're going to the gym and you have a routine, and then the minute you stop going to the gym, your body tells you, hey, this is weird. You're not going to the gym anymore. So you're developing this muscle over time, and then you think about it if you don't do it.
That is exactly true. And what we allow ourselves to happen is we are inundated with distractions, notifications. If we're in the office, people pinging us and tapping on the shoulder and knocking on the door, what have you. But if you're at home, you also have other distractions, or both, right, at the same time. So you have to protect this very, very tightly, and therefore you're going to get the most out of it. And then exactly what you just described, Jason, so perfectly well, it becomes like a gym routine. Your body and your mind are going to start to ask for it, for sure.
So then that leads me to thinking, so now I'm this high flying executive. I'm doing this all the time, or I'm not doing it yet. But I talked about burnout from a project management standpoint. So how,
Yeah.
and sometimes we don't recognize, and we said there's 5 or 6 signs of burnout. Are we even aware of it? And I'd say most of the time, especially project managers, are not aware of that. But so I guess one of the questions is, how do you counsel executives on saying, are you even aware that you are burnt out? Because obviously you're meeting all your targets, you are getting promotions and raises and everything you want, special bonuses and special trips
Yes.
to wherever you want to go. But
Mhm.
in fact, you're burnt out. So how do you see that conundrum?
Yeah, I really like how you explained that and set that up because they're basically winning the wrong game. Many people, God knows I did it myself before, having some challenges and having to understand what burnout was and the implications for myself, etc. Where and how did I got myself out of that, and therefore study to help others in the same way. When we're chasing only external metrics like you were describing, the titles, the bonuses, the recognition, while we're neglecting our alignment to the meaning that we get from work and the energy that we should have and we should look after, there is something that neuroscience calls the reward prediction error, which basically translates into we burn out, not from too much work, but from too little purpose. So it's almost like I sometimes feel, Jason, when I think about this concept of reward prediction error, I almost think like putting our ladder on the wrong wall to climb that ladder, and therefore we have to think back and say, okay, what is really what I really want to do? Where do I want to see myself in a year? What are really my priorities? What really gives me meaning? How I'm really feeling. I need to be honest with myself, and think about that. It's very seductive to be part of the elite of people that are obviously in the race, of course, for more titles, more recognition, etc. Obviously, it is. We've been there, but it's very very important to stop and make this exercise, right, and evaluate what really um, is giving us meaning and what is really either giving us energy, and that can be an exercise that you can do literally pen and paper. What gives me energy, what subtract energy for me, and then what is also giving me purpose.
So I love that. Actually, I was thinking, as you're saying, that we all have support structures or support people that we should be relying on, and that we don't necessarily do that for whatever reason. And I think
Mhm.
from a cultural standpoint, I was mentioning earlier about how in certain cultures it might be you're losing face if you admit that you have a problem, that you are burnt out, and
Yes.
that you must be the bastion of strength. But at the same time, do you have a support structure or support people? It could be your significant other, it could be anybody, a friend, it could be an AI generated thing you're mentioning earlier today.
Yeah.
And then I was very, very curious about that. But how do you see people, and do you actually counsel people on saying, hey, identify your support pool that can help you through this? And hopefully
I
they
Wow.
are challenging you and they're recognizing these signs because you may not be seeing them yourself.
Yes. I think that that is definitely an extremely powerful insight, Jason. We believe, because we live in these very fast-paced environments, we have been very successful, we're able to do many things and achieve many things, etc. The challenge is that nobody really teaches you to forget about work-life balance. Nobody really teaches you to balance your energy and balance the things that are really priorities for you, meaning your values, your meaning, your purpose, etc. Nobody, the vast majority of the leaders that I start to work with, they usually, when I ask them, what is your purpose these days, they don't know. What gives you meaning, they don't know. These things go very very deep into each one of us. So that is on one side. On another side is exactly the brilliant thing that you just described, which is, do I have a support system around me? And I don't do therapy, even though I'm a psychologist. I'm an organizational psychologist, so focused on behavior in the workplace, not individual per se. But I do have clients that I have had to refer in my coaching practice to a therapist because of the lack of support systems, identifying that they really don't have the support system that is required, and of course start a routine of therapy in order to ensure that they look at themselves and reevaluate and reassess what's really important to them. So your point is a tremendously important one. We should all do it, Jason. Basically, we should all do it.
Yeah, easier said than done, but yeah, you're absolutely right.
Easier
So
said
let's
than
talk
done.
about one of the things that I told you how disruptive change is to project managers. It is.
Yeah,
If I even look at it from a PMO perspective, PMOs, we
yeah,
drive change management versus management of change. So management of change is a project management concept and a
hmm,
process. Change management, and sometimes people use them interchangeably. They're not the same. There are a lot of intersect points, but they're not the same. So you have a change, an organizational change that you want to drive.
yeah,
That could be a new software, it could be a new way of working, it could be a new organizational structure with
yeah.
new roles and responsibilities. And
Hmm.
let me ask you, in your, especially if it's a large scale change, like we're going to go to SAP now, we're going to go to Oracle right
Right,
now. So,
right.
what do companies miss when they do this from a human standpoint?
Yeah, what I've learned is that people don't resist change. They resist the uncertainty that change brings. So you talked about this before, as part of the strategies that you have implemented to ensure success in your projects. The brain craves psychological safety. So without the transparency, so think about the fact that I said resisting uncertainty. So without transparency, people really default to fear-based thinking. We typically, when we don't have the information, our minds, our brains go to negative thinking or fear-based thinking. We never go to, oh, this is going to be for the best for all of us. Oh, I'm sure I can do it. No, because our brain is a predictability machine. It's meant the number one job of our brain is to keep us alive. So they're never going to go for the flowery, positive, etc. They go for the fear-based thinking. So trust, which you already mentioned, dialogue, you already mentioned, the small wins that you talked about at the end in terms of thanking the team, thanking the project manager for a very well done, project execution, etc., team management, stakeholder management, etc. Wins. So these small wins turn resistance into resilience. And what I have found is that leading change at the speed of trust is more important than leading change at the speed of strategy.
I think you touched on really two great points there, and I have to kind of tie it back to from a project management standpoint. And I had a conversation even earlier today before our session about risk management,
Okay.
but then I had to say, by the way, it's risk and opportunity management. Why are we always thinking about just what could go wrong versus opportunities that we can identify and
Yeah.
capitalize on? So I like also the quick win concept because I have led a few change initiatives, by the way, where we actually have utilized the right line transformation a concept or compass, if you've heard about that.
Yeah.
And what I liked about it is, yes, you have your army of people that are going to help you, your champions to drive this change,
Yeah.
and especially at the lowest level possible, because usually it's top down or bottom up, but always we say in the middle is where things can get kind of shaky. Um, but I'm seeing, and you mentioned earlier about high pressure environments and how we coach people to get over their fears and their anxieties. Um, so I think are we missing a core belief or a core value here? And maybe from a psychological standpoint, you could say, hey, here's how you should be framing this from your standpoint.
Mhm.
versus me telling you how you should be framing this. Let me teach you how to frame it yourself. Is that what you're what we
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And I think that, I always, I'm reminded of when, when you're doing large scale changes at an organizational level, for example. I remember, one of my latest, they were basically changing the whole business model of the company, right? How they were gonna sell and make money. So as you probably can imagine, this was not something that you could share across the board. Like we're changing a key system of ours. So the what I mean by doing or having these type of changes, Jason, is that you sometimes have to handle a lot of confidentiality and a lot of things that you cannot share openly. There's a time and a moment for all of that, but transparency in even saying that, even managing that this is a confidential project, by the same token, we're going to be informing you on a weekly basis or a bi-weekly basis, etc. But this is going to be, we need all of you, etc., to ensure success becomes really, really important. So information, respectful communication, taking people into consideration and bring them under the tent in the at the right timing becomes really, really vital, right? And I'm sure you've done this. I don't even know how many times, my good friend.
a few times, but I will say that I find, especially in today's climate, that implementing changes is extremely difficult because of all the uncertainty that we have geopolitically right now and all of these, economic things that are going back and forth and not clear strategies or things that are changing daily. So we're being bombarded daily by changes in relationships between countries or economic treaties or even domestic policies that affect people directly, affect their ability to even focus and concentrate on their work, much less embrace a change that you're trying to drive over the finish line.
Yeah,
So how do you see, if we look at that, what can leadership do? And maybe it's at multiple layers that we should be thinking about this.
yeah,
But how do we defuse these bombs all over the place? I don't want to say the word bomb, but I'm going to say the word
yeah.
maybe all these distractions and these uncertainties that we didn't even cause ourselves, and now we have to embrace a change.
Yes. There's a an important aspect here, another ingredient, just to add to your context setting, which is attention. And what I mean by that is, everybody's competing for our attention. If I provide an example, imagine that powerful comment on concept, regarding the news. Their job is to keep you glued to the either to your phone or to your mobile, to your TV screen, what have you, because what they typically do is sensational, negative, scary type of showcasing, because that is one of the things that, obviously, our brain is going to look for: fear, things that are causing us fear. So if attention is attracted by creating fear, do we really have, in the case of the news, do we really have control over that? No, I don't have control over what's happening on the other side of the world. But I do have control on what's happening with me, number one, maybe with my team, inside my own projects, inside my own initiatives, etc., to a certain extent. So controlling the controllable, attention is essential, because where attention goes, action goes. And then, the other piece, which is super duper important, is regulating our state before we can activate our strategy. And one of the big areas here is manifested, of course, is stress. And when stress happens, especially on a sustained formulation on a continued basis, day in and day out, it's problems, it's issues, it's geopolitics, etc. It basically hijacks our prefrontal cortex, and let's not forget that this is where we do decision making, right? So as well as judgment. So it is very important, independently of the role that we have, the job that we do, that we regulate our states. And some of the ways in which we can do that is by micro practices, for example, like breathing, like 4-7-8, 4 in, 7 hold, 8 exhale. You do that 3 or 4 times, for example, when you're going to go into an important meeting, or you have had a tremendously stressful morning, etc. Because basically what breath does is it helps us regulate our nervous system and normal and bringing it back to normal. That would be one. Sleep hygiene, right? Very, very critical to restore our bandwidth in our brains and our full capacities. If we don't sleep well, we're not going to be at our best the next day. If you don't sleep well for a week or 2 or 3 or a month, imagine where we're going to land. So when we're calm, that doesn't mean that it's absence of pressure. It's basically calm equates to I have multiple practices in my pocket that I execute upon when I need them.
I love all that. Yeah, and I think sleep. Obviously, subscribe to that absolutely. And you already. I had a couple more questions for you before we finish our session, and you already answered one of them. So I will get straight to one of the ones you asked me about project management and using AI and how AI is affecting project management. So, from your standpoint, if we look at leadership, just generally
Yeah.
speaking, um, where are we headed with AI, and how are leaders going to be more effective, I guess, in their job?
Yeah. Yeah. And I was thinking about this when you shared your take on this and the opportunities that you were seeing. And I think that now leaders are not just going to manage the outputs that the team generates or might generate. They're going to have an opportunity to architect the meaning. And what I mean by this is that AI will handle what we described, you and I, before, the data, the analysis, etc. But what is uniquely human is and will remain as such is building trust, is setting the ethical guardrails, it's creating shared purpose. So what I see, Jason, as the next area of leadership is about designing the why that technology can't replicate for us. So it's that meaning, it's that basically why that leaders will have to contribute to their teams.
I'm glad you mentioned ethics and responsibility because that is a huge one for me, especially working in a company with high levels of technological expertise,
Yeah.
patents, and the like. So we have
Wow.
to customize our AI engines. We can't, otherwise, everything we have will be public domain. So we have
Wow.
ethics and responsibilities and even policies. And I know that, that's still a work in progress in many governments across the world
Yes.
that maybe have not really fully developed and or late or rolled out, if you will, AI policies and ethics and how that can even lead to prosecution if it's not done correctly. Do you know anything
Wow.
about where that is today? Do you have any insights on that?
The what I anticipate and what I see is that um, we are still in the process of, if I look at social media, for example, as the previous wave to AI, right? We are still trying to figure out what the right legal, ethical guardrails and considerations are for social media, especially because we now know that there's some important psychological implications, emotional implications, when people get addicted to that. And I'm using that term loosely. It has not yet been defined as a medical addiction, but I wouldn't be surprised if that were to happen down the road. And the problem is not social media. The problem is how we use it. It has the applications have been designed, Facebook, Google. Think of any that you want, TikTok, etc. They have been designed to keep us there, to keep our attention there, because attention means money, means currency, the new currency. So the guardrails, the legalese, the ethical considerations are being considered after the fact, and therefore they have to go back and implement them, make sure. It's like telling kids now at school, you cannot have your phone inside the classroom, and different states and different parts of the country and part of the world are going back and forth with this. So having said that, in the case of AI, I think we are in a similar circumstance where it is up to organizations to really make sure that the ethical and the legal guidelines are anticipated and prevented, so that there are no issues or challenges down the road. AI doesn't come with a set of instructions. It's almost like a teenager, that can run free and wild and do whatever. It's like having a credit card with no limit for a teenager. Basically, it's like that. We have to set the guardrails and the ethical guidelines, so that we prevent and anticipate what potential things may happen.
And I like that as well, because I think at the pace that it's developing, and now every month there are new things coming out. I think
Yeah,
from a conceptual standpoint, we need to say, well, we can't go into the micro because the micro is changing every day. But at least from the macro level, we can say
yeah,
conceptually, here's how this is going to be managed. And you, as leaders in our organization, you have a role to play and responsibility. And here is that. Obviously, it takes work, it takes planning, it takes a strategy, an AI strategy for all companies. And yeah, fascinating. And this kind of leads me to my last question for you, because
yeah,
we're almost out of time here. Um, and this is something that I get asked all the time as well. So if you could give someone a piece of advice, any new leader starting today, just like when they ask me, I'm a new project manager, I'm starting today, what do I need to be thinking about?
yeah.
And I'll give you my take real quick if you allow me to, and I'll get over to you. But I always
Please.
say, don't rush into wanting to be a project manager in 24 hours. You're not going to be a senior level PM in even 2 years. You need to have your street cred, or as I say, saltwater cred, if you're talking in the energy sector.
Yeah.
You have to develop certain things that cannot even be accelerated by AI or by humans. But if you're just a new leader starting to, no matter if you're a project manager or not, what advice would you give them?
Yeah, I really like what you described, and it just painted in my mind, Jason, for that great advice for new PMs. That it's like when you use GPS, and you get to the place, but you don't really know how you got there. So there's a time, there's a process there. You have to know, you have to get your bearings, you have to do the practice, and not just take the shortcut, because the shortcut can only take you so far. If you don't have the experience, and of course the expertise, it's very, very difficult for you to really do something more. You're going to be contained in that block. So I really like very, very powerful advice that you're giving them. From my perspective, the number one piece of advice is lead yourself first. Manage your mindset, of course, your attention and your energy with the same rigor as you manage strategy. And I think leadership is an inside out inner architecture, which in the end is going to help you fuel impact and, of course, generate value. I do believe that Strong leaders don't just build results, but they literally build themselves first. If you build yourself first, you're going to have the strength and the core to be able to not only succeed as a leader, but as a human without being burned out in the process, and be able to develop others, obviously as well.
I love that. And I completely agree with you, by the way. It's inside out. And that ties me in my last comment here, and I know we're almost at time, is when we're enacting change management, that's why I like the bright line transformational compass. It's like change comes from within, so it's inside out. So how do I frame the change from my point of view? I have to convince myself to adopt the change for it to work. Otherwise, I will be forced to do something that I might still be able to do, just not as effectively. So I'm thinking as a leader, I like how you frame that first you have to know what it means for yourself to be a leader. Then you can
Yeah.
outwardly project, and then you're more successful rather than someone tells you, this is what I expect a leader to be. These are the behaviors I expect. And you can still do that. That's still important, by the way. But for
Yeah.
you to live it, to adopt it, if it doesn't come from within, then it's not going to be as successful.
I 100% agree. I think that it is a huge responsibility nowadays to be a leader. It has always been important, but today is key. And in order to be a successful leader, a high impact and a human centered leader, you have to first manage and lead yourself. No other way.
And I've really, really enjoyed this conversation with you. It's been really super fascinating to talk to someone like you that's so incredibly knowledgeable about leadership, about neuroscience. That's always fascinated me. And of course, as a person also, I like your energy and your personality. And I just want to think that I had a really nice time talking with you today.
Thank you, Jason. Same here. I think that I definitely I feel that I know enough about project management, but every time that I talk to you, it's always more and more and more in depth. Both wide and deep. Always something new, always something fascinating. And I do believe that it is the area of the future. If I had a young child, I would probably tell them you have to focus on this area for sure.
Would you believe that we're actually starting grassroots campaigns, even here in the Houston area, at the high school level to start introducing project management concepts and certifications for even high schoolers right now? So I appreciate the shout out for the profession because once again, we're not always the most understood, or I don't want to say respected, maybe that's not the right word, but it's always a pleasure to hear someone that understands our challenges and really knows how to help us guide ourselves into a better future through the mindset. Because that's, I think, a lot of our problems exist in our mind. We can probably figure out most things.
That is in a nutshell where I have landed, at least after decades of working around very many talented leaders, researchers, failures, lessons learned, different latitudes. The commonality is the human aspect, and for me it's the mindset. If And because of neuroplasticity, now we know that we can rewire ourselves to whatever we want. So the challenge is there. It's simple, but it's not easy.
Thanks, Anna, for your time. I really appreciate it today.
Thank you very much, and until next time, thank you.